The Taiwan Strait is only 110 miles wide at its narrowest point, but it feels like the most dangerous waterway on Earth. On September 9th, 2025, two Allied ships, Canada's HMCS Ottawa and Australia's HMAS Warramunga, cut directly through it. On paper, it was a legal transit through international waters. In reality, it was a deliberate challenge to Beijing's sweeping claims, and the response was immediate. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive from Naval Brief. The transit began just after dawn. A pale orange glow touched the horizon as Ottawa led the way, Warramunga trailing close behind, both ships holding a steady 15 knots. To the casual eye, the sea looked calm, but for the crews on deck, the tension was thick. They knew this wasn't a routine patrol. This was a statement. Within 30 minutes, the silence of the strait was broken. Radar operators aboard Ottawa called out multiple fast-moving returns. Two Chinese destroyers raced in from the north, their massive gray hulls cutting white trails across the water. Another pair of frigates approached from the south, boxing in the Allies' path. Above, UAVs appeared as small dots against the brightening sky, circling deliberately. The Chinese were watching, recording, and making sure the world knew. One destroyer closed dangerously fast. Its captain angled across Ottawa's bow at less than 2,000 yards, an aggressive maneuver by any standard. Ottawa's bridge slowed fractionally to avoid contact, but stayed its course. The Chinese ship blasted its horn, the sound echoing across the strait like a warning siren. Loudspeakers in Mandarin barked. "You are entering Chinese waters. Turn back immediately." Then things escalated further. Sensors lit up on Ottawa's consoles. A Chinese frigate had activated fire control radar, essentially placing a target lock on the Canadian ship. Crews snapped to full readiness. Weapons were manned. Damage control teams strapped helmets and prepared hoses. For 10 long seconds, the lock stayed active before finally dropping away. It was a signal, not an accident. For sailors topside, it was a surreal mix of routine and danger. Some leaned on rails pretending calm, while their eyes stayed locked on helicopters buzzing just overhead, rotor wash rattling the deck. One Australian petty officer later compared it to standing on a pier while trucks barrel past at arm's length. Another Canadian sailor said it was like playing chicken with a storm you can't predict. Bridge officers called out bearings and clipped voices, watching Chinese ships swing close. A single wrong move could have meant collision, fire, or worse. In the wardroom later, one junior officer admitted he had rehearsed in his head what orders he would give if the radar lock had stayed on. That mix of professionalism and nerves summed up the crossing, a passage that was legal but never safe. Yet despite the noise, the Allies held formation. They didn't flinch, they didn't turn. Their course remained straight and true. The message unspoken but undeniable. The strait is open water, and we will sail it. Taiwan took note. Taipei's Ministry of Defense issued a quick statement welcoming the passage as a reaffirmation of support for Taiwan security. But beyond the official line, ordinary Taiwanese citizens reacted in their own way. Talk shows lit up with debate. Newspapers ran front-page photos of Ottawa and Warramunga slicing between Chinese shadows. Comment threads brimmed with both gratitude and worry. For an island that faces near-daily incursions into its air defense zone, these images mattered. They showed Taiwan was not alone. Local fishermen in Kaohsiung told reporters they watched coverage with pride, saying, "It means someone else dares to come here." University students interviewed on Taiwanese television said the transit made the stakes of their future feel real. Not just politics and headlines, but ships on their doorstep. Beijing, however, had no interest in those images spreading unchecked. China's foreign ministry condemned the transit as a deliberate provocation, accusing Canada and Australia of interfering in regional affairs. State television broadcast dramatic footage of Chinese destroyers looming close, set to triumphant background music. Commentators insisted the PLA Navy had driven away the intruders, but international feeds told a different story. Both Allied ships completed their passage without turning back. No matter the spin, the crossing stood. Chinese analysts privately admitted the footage was awkward. Two advanced warships from middle powers had threaded the strait, showing that Beijing's threats weren't enough to shut down a lawful transit. For a government obsessed with the image of control, that was a bruise. The United States, though not directly part of this passage, quietly welcomed it. Washington has long carried the burden of freedom of navigation operations. This time, allies shared the weight. For the Pentagon, it was proof that the coalition resisting Beijing's claims is broadening. For Japan, watching from just north of Taiwan, it was reassurance that the region is not standing alone. Australia's participation carried symbolic weight. Warramunga has patrolled from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean, but threading the Taiwan Strait placed it at the heart of the Indo-Pacific contest. For Canberra, it was about proving words with action. AUKUS, the Trilateral Security Pact, has meaning only if backed by deployments like this one. For Canada, Ottawa's role was just as striking. Sailing thousands of miles from home into contested waters underlined that the Taiwan Strait isn't just an Asian concern. NATO allies stepping into the Pacific reframed the issue. What happens here touches Europe as well. Regional allies weighed in too. The Philippines praised the passage, linking it directly to their own maritime disputes with China. South Korean commentators debated whether Chinese aggression could spill into the Yellow Sea. Even India's outlets highlighted the transit, noting how it paralleled their own standoffs with Beijing in the Himalayas. The risks were clear. A radar lock mistaken as an imminent strike, a near collision misread as intentional. Either could have triggered crisis. In these waters, every helm order carries political weight. Seconds count. Internationally, the images spread quickly. Clips of Canadian and Australian ships framed against Chinese destroyers circulated on social media. Some called the crossing reckless. Others called it necessary. For Taiwan, it was reassurance. For Beijing, it was frustration. For much of the world, it was a reminder the Taiwan Strait is not calm. It is contested. China's Ministry of Defense tried to bury the incident, calling it an intrusion handled in accordance with protocol. But that couldn't obscure the simple truth. The ships had passed. The Taiwan Strait is more than a waterway. It is a fault line where global powers test each other at close range, separated by little more than spray and wake. On September 9th, that fault line flared again. It wasn't only about navigation. It was about patience, credibility, and will. For Taiwan, the sight of Allied flags in its waters was reassurance. For Canada and Australia, it was proof of resolve. For Beijing, it was a reminder that intimidation does not guarantee control. And for the rest of the world, it was a warning that peace in the Strait is not automatic. It must be demonstrated, sailed, and defended, one transit at a time. This is Naval Brief, your briefing room for sea power and defense analysis. If you're all hands on deck for real naval operations, maritime conflict, and global defense, subscribe and stay mission ready for the next briefing.